Rockstars, welcome to Epiphanish, a podcast that will change how you perceive everything. Maybe. And for you to recognize where you have choice and options in your own life. I'm your host and guide, Lisa Westgate, an award-winning mental health advocate, best-selling author, rockstar, life and business strategist of almost a decade, and mum of three. Remember to share this episode and your Epiphanish moment on socials, and please like, follow, share, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platforms. Hey Rockstars, welcome back to Epiphanish. Well, my conversation with Derrick McManus was so value-packed and so phenomenal that what we actually decided was that we had so much content we wanted to share with you that we really believe is so useful, actionable, and profound that what we've done is decided to give you 2 episodes of the magic and the wonder of Derrick McManus. So please enjoy part 2 of my chat with Derrick. Derrick McManus has generously agreed to give a little bit of his more of his time to talk to us today about resilience, human durability, mental health, all kinds of amazing topics. So we appreciate him giving us this bonus content for Epiphanish Plus subscribers. We were just having a quick little chat about mental health in terms of for me, it's important to make a distinction in the mental health space between, I guess, I'm not sure of the language I want to use, but like clinically significant mental illnesses. So things like dissociative identity disorder, schizophrenia, clinical depression, things that we understand that there is a neurochemical component to, significant trauma response. There's sort of that department of mental health conditions that this is sort of how I break it up in my mind, which, need to be dealt with a certain way and medicated and psychological and psychiatric support and all that. Then there's what I call the psychosocial mental health challenges. And for me, the predominant ones in that are things like anxiety and depression, which, we see the statistics, tripping over my words, of like significant proportions of young people, have anxiety and or depression, and they're quite prolific. We now have these major issues with these 2 conditions. My perspective, to super oversimplify, I really want to clarify, I've been diagnosed with both of those at some point, anxiety, depression. I have my own lived experience of them. I'm not diminishing them at all. I just think they can be approached in a different way. So the way that I super oversimplify these is ultimately anxiety is future-paced fear. So it's a fear about things that haven't happened yet. So it's playing that what if game, which is something that you kind of alluded to and talked about from a positive perspective of, okay, well, what if this, then that, then I'll do this. Anxiety tends to be a negative what if spiral. Or what if this happens, and then what if this happens? So the way that I sort of think about the way human beings work, we work in spirals. We either spiral up or we spiral down. And there's, a point at which you can flip a spiral. So you go, but our minds, particularly my mind, likes to sort of chase things to an end, so I'll continue the thought series. So anxiety to me is typically, in a lot of cases, future-paced fear. So it's playing that negative what-if game, that spiral. And my own anxiety experience has been, I tend to, when it's bad, I lean into catastrophic thoughts. So I will think, my brain, for some reason, will think about the worst thing that I can think of and chase that thought. all the way to, well, what could it be? So, for example, when I was 17, I remember imagining for no reason, just randomly, like, it's obvious if one of my parents dies, I would clearly like be raised by the other one, right? That makes no sense. That's a no-brainer, obviously.
Yep.
But the anxiety thought process was, what if they both died at the same time, some sort of, car crash or something? Then what would happen? Where would we live? I've got a younger brother, right? So where would we live? Who would take care of us? Would we stay in this house? Would we have to go into foster care? Would we go to different houses? Do we have relatives that could take care of us? And I would spiral down all the way to the point where my mum walked in and I was distraught and in tears and distressed. And, she was like, "Oh my God, what's happened?" And I was like, "I was imagining if you and dad were dead." She's like, "Why?" Right? And for me, like, that's catastrophic anxiety, right? That's that catastrophe, like, what if a tree falls on the house? And that's always been the way that my anxiety has manifested my anxious thoughts. This is not prolific. I now probably have maybe, 4 episodes a year where it goes and my brain does this weird thing, and I've got strategies now to sort of pull it up and go, hang on a minute, we don't need to chase that all the way down. Thank you, brain. Yes. And understanding that anxiety it's a process of mental rehearsal with the drive is safety, right? If I think
Yep.
this all the way through, then when the tree falls on the house, I'll be super prepared, right? Now, it's not rational, it doesn't make sense. You won't be prepared. It's still going to be catastrophic if some of those things happen. Like, I'm suspicious about how prepared I would be in these situations just because I've played it out. But that's I guess the driver for anything that comes from within us is always positive, right? Your mind is actually always working for you. So it might be an awful experience that leads to me, crying on my bedroom floor, but the purpose of it, as far as my brain is concerned, is, yeah, but you're safe now because we've thought about it, right? So it's coming from a good place. Feedback.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, I absolutely agree with that. I honestly think the brain is trying to protect us. And
Always.
even thinking about the worst thing that happened, if mum and dad did both die instantaneously, where would we be? The brain is trying to say, if the worst thing happens, how will we manage it?
Yeah.
And I like to think that my mind works on both spirals at the same time, one
Mm-hmm.
spiraling down, one spiraling up. And I call these open, honest, confronting conversations. And you're addressing the reality. If mum and dad died, what possibility might be going into foster home, being separated, finding hardship in those foster homes, blah, 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 all those things. My mind is also saying, what are the opportunities? Now, in
Mm,
those circumstances, the opportunities are limited, but the sooner we start thinking about what are those opportunities, the more chance we've got of making them happen.
yeah.
The opportunities would be being absolutely forthright up in front, saying, my brother and I want to stay together. And if we can't stay together,
Mm,
um, we don't want to be separated. We will not go into any other care or whatever it might be. I don't know how much control you've got over that, but that would be the attitude going in. And as you were 17 at the time,
yeah.
yeah. So you would probably have more control over that than a 5-year-old.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, of
Yeah.
course. And I think that's that
Um,
pivot point that I talk about, like that you can flip a downward spiral into an upward spiral. You basically set your mind, which, we talk about mindset, right? It's what you
yep.
set your mind to. So if we set our mind to something, okay, well, what would be the opportunities, or what, how could that play out, or what are the positives that could come from this? As soon as you set your mind, as in change your mindset, right?
Yep.
For the up spiral, the nature of our brain chasing the thoughts will follow, it'll continue up. So there's that moment or that opportunity for um, making a choice about what you're going to set your mind to, which direction are you going to go, right? Just to come back to sort of this psychosocial mental health thing. So that's kind of anxiety, the way I see it. And depression, I'd be really interested if you know, how you feel about this. I feel like this, again, clinical depression, separate issue. I'm talking about kind of this malaise, melancholy. I'm unhappy with my life. My circumstances are not what I want them to be. That experience of depression that's, you know, I guess really commonly talked about in terms of young people and on social media and, you know, the TikToks and all that. To me, depression is the gap between your expectations and your reality. So if you have expectations of, you know, the car you want to drive, where you want to live, what label clothes you want in your wardrobe, or, you know, your career path, or whatever it is, you know, I wanted to have a family by now, whatever those expectations are, and then the life that you live, there's a space between, right?
Yep.
That focusing on the gap is where depression can come in my point of view, right? So you've got two opportunities to influence change. You can either adjust your expectations and not necessarily, you know, but okay, let's get a bit real about this. You know, I'm
Yep.
you know, currently unemployed, so a new car's probably not on the cards, right? So bringing a little perspective to those expectations, so you can either drop that down to more achievable goals or aspirations, and or change things in reality to get you closer to where you want to be. And the key element in this, from me, in my experience, is, it's going to sound cliche as fuck, but it's gratitude, right?
Love
I
it.
think when you can be grateful for, like I said to you at the beginning, I don't know if we're recording, but you know, I'm grateful to be able to be alive, to have a shower, you know,
Yep.
to read a great book, to have a meal with my family, right? When you can sit in gratitude for your reality, and like you said, making the most of whatever it is, right? And sitting in that, like, okay, so it's not, you know, I'm not a megastar with a super yacht, but things are actually pretty great. There's a lot of silver linings in my world. And taking the focus away from the gap and sitting in gratitude in the reality, and then setting some um, attainable with a stretch goals and aspirations. I think if you're in that state, there's not room for depression, because you're not fixating on what you don't have or what the space is. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think I've challenged some people in my life because I've always aspired to achieve and have certain things. And I bought myself a new car, and it was a Honda Accord, and it was, you know, the luxury model. It was secondhand, so it wasn't brand new, but it was this beautiful car. And when I got the car, people said, "Oh, you must be really happy." And I said, "Well, I am, but I can't wait until I get my convertible." And they've gone, "How can you not be happy? That is, no, no, no. I'm enjoying everything I've got now, but I still have this expectation that I'm going to grow." Absolutely loving that car. It was a beautiful car. But knowing that I still want to grow. The other thing that I'll pick up on is that, and I can't remember the actual words for it, but the DSM-5,
Mm,
which is the diagnostic manual
yeah.
for mental health. The most recent one is the 5, the Model 5.
Mm,
That defines depression as a certain level of impact on your life for a period of a month or more. And so I like to make the distinction: are you going through depression, or are you going through a depressive episode?
mm.
Because I go through depressive episodes.
Sure. We're all
Things don't go well for me. But, you know, is it depression? Is it clinically depression? Or is it just I'm feeling sad? I'm feeling
Oh,
mad?
ooh, I could really push the edges of this conversation. So
Oh, please do, please
I'm
do.
going to say something. I don't think I've ever said this publicly before. I've worked with, over the last 10 years, nearly 10 years, I've worked with quite a few people that have, come to me for coaching and mental health and recovering from PTSD and all sorts of challenges. And I think I've probably heard every awful story of, human being trauma and the terrible things human beings can do to each other. And I've had a number of people over that period of time tell me that they are suicidal. Okay. I'll take it on face value every time, right? I never, I think we had a chat on my conversation with Kim, which was, I think, the second episode. We were talking about attention seeking, people being labeled attention seeking behaviors. And our point is, yes, they are attention seeking. Therefore, they need attention, right? Like it's not a cop out. It's they're crying out. They need something, right? So I will never dismiss anyone who communicates that to me. I'll take it on face value. Okay, well, let's explore that. What's that about? I can't put a statistic on it. I would say most, when we explore that, I'm suicidal. I don't think I want to be here anymore. Okay, all right. Well, let's look at that. When we look at the individual, I'm going to talk with my hands because I'm European. When we look at the individual, and then we examine the circumstances of their life, right? Their relationship, their job, their living situation, right? And we look at the circumstances of their life. And they tell me, my girlfriend broke up with me, and I don't like my job. It's too stressful, this, that, and the other. Okay, great. So, and I'm in the middle, and I don't know what to do, and I just want to check out. Okay. If these circumstances were different, if you were living where you wanted to live in, home was a sanctuary, you had a job that you enjoyed going to, and you were in a relationship that felt, safe and nurturing and whatever, would you still want to kill yourself? Oh, no, if I had all that, no. Okay. So my reframe of this with multiple clients. So is it possible that you're not suicidal, you just have circumstances in your life that you want to change? This is where the work is to be done. Because if you're telling me that if all of that was different, great, then you wouldn't want to check out, then we're having a different conversation.
I'm going to go a step further. A lot of people believe they are suicidal because they have a thought of suicide.
Oh, yeah.
And
It's not the same thing.
Let me just go back a step
Mm.
and be very, very clear. You and I are exactly the same. We never want to diminish any discussion about mental health. It's always serious. It's always got to be taken with reality.
Absolutely.
But then try and put it in context for that situation. And a lot of people get very surprised when I talk about the fact that I had thoughts of suicide when I was going through the shooting. I had thoughts of suicide, and I don't shy away from it. But I see myself as a person who considers every option available to me to solve a problem. And don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect at it. I don't see everything. Lots of people give me different ideas, but I like to try and consider as many as I possibly can. As I was going through my biggest challenges, I said there were tears, there were sleepless nights, there was overwhelm, there was stress. And I considered, what are my options for dealing with this? Okay, one of the options I could consider is taking my life. I could end it all and then I have no problems. And within a very short period of time, I'm talking minutes, maybe hours, I've gone, that's not an option that I want to take. So that one's off the table. What's the next best option? But it was on the table because it was an option. Now, just because we think about it doesn't mean we're suicidal.
Yeah.
So let's make a very clear distinction about how much are you thinking you're suicidal? How many thoughts are you having with it? How realistically are you going through the processes?
Absolutely.
And let's put it in context. Now, I've had people who have discussed their suicidal ideation with me, and they're very real. I've had friends who have taken their life. So I do not want to be dismissive. of this. If somebody is having suicidal thoughts, yeah, we need to be open about it. But just because we think about suicide doesn't mean we are suicidal.
Yeah, I think that's a really key distinction. I totally agree. Listeners would know we've recently had the 1 year anniversary of my uncle passing by his own hand. And so it's a very close topic to me. And I'm a big advocate of what you call open, honest, confronting conversations. I call having difficult conversations, right? And I think that it one it's it's okay to talk about it. It's not the boogeyman of Voldemort. Like we can say it. And two, I think it's really important to make those distinctions. It's not unusual as a human being having a human experience to have points and moments in your life where you think, oh, it's all this is a lot, and we consider opting out. I've had multiple points throughout my life where that's been a consideration. Um, I also, like you've expressed, I assumed at my worst that I was suicidal because, like, as in I self-labeled in my own brain, right? Didn't tell anyone because I was having what I later, when I got more vocabulary around it, understood were intrusive thoughts. So I was having repetitive intrusive thoughts of a means of taking my own life. But what I lacked was intention, right? I knew, even as I was having these pervasive intrusive thoughts, that I was never going to act on it. I had a 2-year-old. I had two other kids. I would never. I knew I would never do that, but it didn't stop the thoughts from coming. And what I had to understand was it sounds terrible and simplistic, and it's only for the sake of brevity. No one dies from the thought, right? They die from the action.
Yep.
And to punish yourself or self-stigmatize or label yourself in a particular way for a thought, I think is potentially compoundingly unhelpful.
Absolutely.
So having an awareness, it's okay, you're allowed to have thoughts. It's where, and coming back to what we've been talking about this whole time, we've got choice and decision about the actions we then take and the thoughts that we allow ourselves to spiral into, or do we flip them up? What resources do we draw on? Do we ask for help? Do we call up and go, I need to speak to a psych because of what I've just gone through, right? So the thought itself is not deadly. But it is crucial, like you said, to ask some really good questions, investigate, be curious, be compassionate. What are the frequency of these thoughts? And that's why we teach, even in mental health first aid, they teach things like asking the direct questions. Do you have a plan? Do you have a time frame? Like, let's get specific so we can know what it is that we're now managing. And I think it's I don't know, I'm hoping that there's someone that's listening to this that hears us say it's okay to have the thought. That in itself is not the same as suicidality. It's actually part of the normal human experience for most.
Absolutely. It is so normal that people just don't understand. People don't understand how normal it is, and part of that is that we don't openly talk about it.
Yeah.
Because people think, oh my gosh, I'm having thoughts of suicide. I can't tell anybody else. They'll doubt me. They'll think I've got mental health. They'll throw me in an institution. All those concerns, worries. Whereas if more people had that discussion of, yeah, well, I actually had a thought of taking my life, but then I thought about all the things that I would miss out on and all the things that I still want to do. And I think that's important. I mean, this draws me to what I call my 5 drivers for success. And it's when we start to get overwhelmed, when we start to doubt ourselves, these are 5 drivers that I think we've got to kick ourselves back into that will give us the opportunity to see a reason to stay excited about the future, a reason to stay motivated, a reason to stay interested in the future. And this may be a good place to start looking at some of the models.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you got a, if you can demonstrate it? That's so, I'm loving the overlaps in our work. So when I do workshops, I frequently get people to write a list, which I refer to as happiness strategies. Oh, let me click the button. Um, yeah, happiness strategies. So, what I get them to do is from the smallest thing that makes them happy. So, like a really good bread roll or something, like really
Yep.
little things that make them happy, all the way up to, 2 weeks in Hawaii. So, from little to big, what are the things that make you happy, that really lift your mood, that elevate you, that make you grateful, that, all those good things. And I get them to write a list, as long as list as they can in the time allowed, right? And then I say, now I want you to take this home. This is predominantly with my work with police, actually. So
Okay.
academy recruits and people that are working in high stress jobs, right? That can really, you can take it home and it can take a toll. And I said, I want you to take this list, and when you get home, I want you to put it on the fridge. And I want you to tell the people that you live with, whether it's your housemates or your family or your partner, and say, this is my list. When I'm in a funk, right? When I hit those down and I just think, oh, I just can't be bothered today, I don't want to do anything, this thing's stressing me, your loved ones can go to the fridge and go, have you gone for a walk? Do you feel like going for a road trip? Can we do a weekend away this weekend? They can look at your list that you've written, things that are guaranteed to lift you up, and they can draw on that as a resource, because so often it's not us that recognizes that we need that, right? It's the people around us that go, you need a bit of a boost. You've given them a pre-written list of things that work. Have you
Yep.
had have you had a shower today? Did you make your bed? Have you had a good meal? Are you hydrated? Have you played with the kids? Have you been outdoors? What's on the list? Let's organize a camping trip. Whatever it is for them that they know works, from the really small, easy to do things, with no notice, to, bigger projects like a, tropical holiday. Can anyone tell I need a holiday? Um, but those, because then that's a resource, right?
Absolutely.
And they can come back to that and go, okay, hang on a minute. These are the things that make me feel good. I'm gonna go grab them. So I'm keen to see, is it letting you do your
Yeah, it will in a moment. And I'm just going to pick up on that. It's very similar to that whiteboard exercise that I started before. What are your challenges and changes you can anticipate? What are the emotions you can feel? And then what are your resources? Your
mm,
resources are the things that you can put into place to manage these things. And when people talk about the resources, other people go, oh, I thought about that, but I didn't think other people would do that. Oh, wow. Can we actually do those things? Are we allowed to? Yes, you're allowed to. Okay. And then you've got this
mm.
you've thought about it beforehand. You've got some idea of how you're going to be able to manage it if it does hit. You don't have to try and get creative in the moment.
Oh,
Um,
look, when you're in an amygdala drive is not the time to be thinking, oh, what can I do to make myself feel better, right? Because your thinky brain is switched off when your emotional brain is kicked in. It's one or the other. We don't do both at the same time.
okay. A little model, like physical model that I like using with that you'll quite like by the sounds of it, is that our emotions and our rational thinking sit on an even plane. And
Mm.
when they're on an even plane, we can plan, we can debate, we can create, we can be funny, we can do all those things because everything's under control. But as soon as we start to get challenged and we're starting to lose control, our emotions go high, our rational thinking goes low. And this is when we're in fight and flight, panic mode. This is not when we do the smart stuff. This is when we do the dumb stuff.
There's actually functional MRIs of the blood supply that goes to the part of the brain that's running emotions. Um,
Yep.
the bit that does the logical critical thinking bit,
Prefrontal cortex,
literally gets less blood flow. Yeah.
absolutely.
So it's, the science supports it, right? It's one or the other. You're either thinking or feeling, and doing both at the same time is a delicate dance, right?
Absolutely. And we know that when we're in fight and flight mode down here, the body is being fueled for fighting or running, right? And the prefrontal cortex, as you said, it gets drained. And that's when we do our higher level thinking, our problem solving, our creativity. And so it's not about saying we can cut out the emotions because we can't. It's about saying, when I get into that state, what are the resources I have available to me? What are the happiness lists that I can go to?
Right.
Break that tension, bring the emotion back down, the rational thinking back up. It
Yeah.
may not get onto the even plane, but the closer we can get them, the more chance we've got of making the right decisions.
Yeah. And I
And the
think
ones
that's
that
why
will be
it's
subtle.
so key to do the work in the beforehand, right?
Absolutely.
And that's why I'm such an advocate of what I call proactive mental health, right? So before there's a problem, the whole system currently is very reactive, right? Oh, now you've got a problem. There's all these phone numbers you can ring. Sure, great. What can we be doing in the proactive space in anticipation of life, right? Whether you're in a high stress job like we both were, or just, life, things happen, right? Stuff's hard. And I think it's reasonable to anticipate a certain level of challenge and difficulty. So what can we upskill people to do before they're at crisis, so that in that exact moment you're describing, they've got something to anchor back to, and it's not reliant on them in that fight, flight, fawn, freeze stage to be like, oh, I don't know, which is why I find it challenging, this idea of trying to get the person who is in mental health crisis to be the one to A, identify that they are, and B, reach out for help. I'm like, you're not thinking clearly at that point. These people are unwell, short term, long term. This idea that it's on them to be like, oh, I think I was the last one to my PTSD party, right?
Yep.
I came out of the mental health closet and was like, I think maybe I've got a problem. And my husband said, no shit, you've been awful to live with for 2 years. What? What do you mean? He's like, oh yeah, it's been really, we're all walking on eggshells, and right. I was the last one to know. And I've described it previously as being like Dorothy in the tornado, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
she's whizzing around in the tornado. Everyone else like, oh no, there's a girl in the tornado. And Dorothy's like, oh, it's windy today, right? She doesn't know she's
Yeah.
in it because she's in it, right?
Yes.
We do not have that level of insight when we're in it. Like, I was so tunnel vision, one foot in front of the other. I got to get up, put uniform on, go to work because I got to make money and buy groceries. Like, I didn't have the level of insight and awareness into my own state to go, oh, I'm going to ring Lifeline. Like, I didn't recognize there was a disconnect. I didn't recognize that those messages, the posters on the back of the loos, I didn't know that was for me.
No, I'll give you another little insight that I'm very happy sharing, but I don't share it often enough. Is that as I told you in the first part of this interview, I saw a psychiatrist immediately after the shooting, and as a result of the shooting, no PTSD, no anxiety, no depression, didn't need ongoing therapy. And one of the things I was able to do with the psychiatrist was articulate, if I start feeling depressed, anxious, and all those things start showing up, these are the signs and these are the things I'd be doing. But 2.5 years after that, knowing all this information, I found myself in the midst of depression, but I didn't know it. And when our emotions go high and our rational thinking goes low, and we start saying to ourselves, I can't do the high level thinking, I can't do the analysis. Yeah. I was very fortunate that the analysis I did do was, I don't have as much excitement for going to work as what I used to. I'm not pushing myself as hard. I must be missing some vitamins in my diet. So I need to go to the doctor and get a blood test and find out what vitamin I need to take. And the doctor diagnosed me with depression. And it was mild depression and mild PTSD. Yeah. And I like to make it very clear, mild depression, mild PTSD. And I was proactive enough to go, I've had the conversation with the psychiatrist 2.5 years before. If it does happen, I'll be able to take these steps. when I was diagnosed and the GP said, you've got mild depression, I've gone, damn, okay, how do we deal with it? And it was that quick.
Well, that's
It
right.
wasn't a denial, it wasn't a fight, it was, this is reality. I knew it was always going to be a possibility. So let's be vulnerable enough to say, I am not Superman. I do get affected by the same things as everybody else does. It's hit me now. How do I manage it? And it hit me for a month. And I was able to go back to the doctor after doing everything he told me to do and taking his advice and doing everything he said. I went back a month later and he said, Derrick, your depression, your anxiety, your depression, your PTSD has now passed. You can go back to doing all the things that you used to do before. But I don't shy away from the fact it hit me and I didn't recognize it. But that happens to a lot of us. So we need to be open to other people saying to us what's going on. And then if they are questioning it, we need to be vulnerable enough to say, we are not super people. We're not super mum. We're not super dad. We're not super Derrick, Lisa, whatever it might be. If it happens to others, it can happen to us.
Yeah.
The more proactive we are in managing it, the better chance we've got of having an outcome by design rather than good fortune or misfortune. And again, this goes back to my 5 drivers that I'll now put on the
Yeah.
screen and share with you.
Yeah. That's why I advocate a reach in model of mental health care to complement the reach out.
Yes. Yeah. So this is my 5 drivers for success. And I hope these are going to work. The first one is optimism. We've got to maintain a sense of optimism. And as soon as we start getting into that depressive state, that overwhelm, that anxiety, we are losing that sense of optimism. And a sense of optimism is just a reason to believe there is something better in the future and it's within our reach, right? It may be a way away, but it's still something within our reach and we can get to it. We've got to maintain that sense of optimism. Without the sense of optimism, and optimism is the reason to believe there is going to be reward for effort. Okay.
Oh, I love
Without the
that.
sense of optimism, no reward for effort, then why bother even trying? And we will lie in bed, we'll sit back, eat ice cream, watch Netflix, and never change.
I
All
believe
right.
that there will be a reward for effort. Yeah, that's great.
The second one is to believe in our influence. And you've spoken about this several times already in the podcasts. We've got to believe in our ability to influence the future.
Yeah.
Now, as I said, there are lots of people in my occupation as a police officer, trying to figure out how to frame that conversation. My occupation as a police officer, they made decisions that influenced me and I couldn't change it, right? It upset me. It annoyed me. It pissed me off. It caused me to cry. I couldn't influence it, but I could then start influencing how it affected me and make the most of those circumstances. It wasn't going to be perfect, but at least I was going to have an influence in what the outcome was. It wasn't going to go just the way they had planned it for me. I was going to have a say in it as well. So as much as possible, we influence what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. When somebody else has more power than us, or COVID hits, or global financial crisis, or whatever it might be, we've got to make the most of it, as I did when I was lying on the ground thinking about spending the rest of my life in a wheelchair. The next one is passion, and passion is meaning. Okay, when there is a meaning to life, there is a reason to keep on pushing ourselves. It's knowing about what you want to do, but it's more about knowing why you want to do it. Why is this important to you? What difference is it going to make to you? And quite often our meaning is about more than ourselves. The one thing I wanted out of the shooting when I was lying on the ground was just to be able to get back to my children and be able to interact with them. It wasn't about me having success or getting back to work or whatever. I wanted to be able to get back and interact with my children and have an influence on their lives, be with them for their trials, their tribulations, their weddings, their birthdays, all those sorts of things. It was more than myself. It was bigger than me. I wanted to be back here for them. People who are working for charities, Mother Teresa's, all those sorts of people, Nelson Mandela, they are working for something bigger. There's more reason to be pushing ourselves. And when we've got that meaning in our life, we are more likely to keep pushing through the challenges to find and follow that sense of optimism. The next one is a plan. And for me, a plan is simply some idea of what we're going to deal with, some idea of how we're going to deal with it. When I prepared for the shooting, I'd never, and I had that conversation with myself. If I get shot, how would I like to manage it? I'd never been shot. So it was some idea of what it was like. I've been through
Mm.
other big challenges. How did I manage those? So some idea of how I might manage this one. The bigger the challenge, the more the planning, the more realistic the challenge might be, the more the planning. But just having those open, honest, confronting conversations, I may be shot and injured, I may be shot and killed. If I do just get injured, how will I handle it? I didn't dwell on it. It was a worst case scenario. That was the worst possible outcome. But working on that cycle of, oh my gosh, that's bad. I also worked on the other cycle of, if I go into Star Group, I'm going to have all these amazing experiences, but prepare for both.
Mm.
Okay. And the last one is what we've been talking about a lot: support. Being bold enough to throw your hand in the air and say, I need some support. I need some assistance. I knew I wasn't all that good. I wasn't as motivated. I wasn't as enthusiastic. I went to the doctor. The doctor told me that I had mild depression and mild PTSD. I immediately took his support on. Okay, how do we deal with this? What do you tell me I need to do? And then go away and do everything he told me. The caveat on doing everything he told me is it's still got to resonate with me.
Mm.
Like, he told me to uh, sell up my house and go to Bali and live in a kibbutz. No, sorry, go to Israel and live in a kibbutz. That would not resonate with me. So it's also got to be something that feels good to us.
Yeah.
And if the first doctor didn't give me the right advice that felt good, I would go and see a second doctor and a third doctor
Yeah.
until I got that advice that I've gone, to know something that feels comfortable. It's come from an expert, but that's the one that feels comfortable for me. And so those 5 drivers, I believe if we've got them in place, they will give us the confidence, the courage to have belief in ourselves and drive through those challenges. It doesn't make it easier, but again, it's going back to that conscious model of, these are the things that I need to have in place. And when I can articulate them, I can deliberately work on them rather than going, oh, what do I need to do? Let me try and think about it. No, I
Yeah.
know what it is. Let's put it in place. It doesn't make it easy as much as it is a simple process.
Oh, simple and easy are definitely not the same thing. Yeah.
No, absolutely.
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 Yeah, I love it. I keep smiling if you're watching this on video. I keep smiling because there's just so much overlap in these points that we've come to um, in our own journeys, but we're so aligned in what we talk about. So you talk about optimism, I talk about the essential nature of hope, right? People need hope, which is essentially exactly what you said, but you call it optimism. You talk about influence and the knowing that you have influence over yourself and your life and your outcomes. I often will talk about agency, right? So people
Yep,
having agency, and ultimately we're talking about the same thing, right? It's that self
absolutely.
empowerment. You talk about passion, something bigger than yourself. I often talk about purpose, right? So what is your purpose? Where does your purpose come from? Is it come from your identity? Like what's the big mission? That for the exact same languaging, right? It'd be something bigger than yourself that you're driven by or
Yeah,
towards.
absolutely.
Plan. I talk about strategy and support. Yeah, is I will often reference tribe. So tribe, like knowing who your people are, coming back to your people, getting that right tribe around you that are gonna lift you and help you shift where you want to get to, rather than maybe some people around you that are not so helpful. And absolutely that aligned pathway. You talked about that resonance, and seeking multiple opinions. The action has to be aligned or resonate with the individual, or else it just won't work. Like you just can't. I can't do the work for my clients. I can't want it more for them than they want it for themselves. Like it's really, I think in context of recovery and healing and this sort of stuff, it's got to be individual led, right? It's got to be
Absolutely.
Come from them, um, like you said, with expert advice and support around you. Um, but it's got to be what feels right for that person. And I think the medical model of mental health is finally catching on that the individualization of mental health care is essential to positive outcomes. It's not a one size fits
Oh,
all. It's not a stamp, oh, we'll send you to this person and they'll fit like it. The more we can individualize people's pathways, the better outcomes they're going to get.
absolutely. Absolutely. Now, people are going to be listening here for a while before they get to too many more models. Um, what models would you like to discuss now? Do you want to talk about the two models of resilience that lead to durability when we understand those?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really interested in how you've, I guess, like created sub uh, sub models for resilience, because resilience is normally sort of plastered up as a thing, and the fact that you've worked out, I guess how to break it down into subsections is really interesting. I'm also mindful that we've almost had another hour chat.
Oh gosh, yes. I will be very quick on this one. Let me just get to the right spot.
I'll put a make a cup of tea warning on the beginning. So
Yeah, absolutely. So here we go. Functional resilience. I usually bring these up one at a time, but I'm going to bring them all up and then just talk to them so we can move through them quickly. So functional resilience is stuff that we need to get through day to day, week to week, month to month. It's the stuff that we go, oh my gosh, this is hard. How am I going to get through it? I know I need to. I'm not passionate about it, but I need to get through it. So whenever I start to get overwhelmed, when I start to get tired, when I start to get snappy with my partner, my children, when I can't focus as much as I want to, sleep and nutrition, my go-tos. If I don't get enough sleep, I'm hopeless. At the moment, I've just been through a series of operations that's still causing me pain of a night time, and I'm not sleeping well. I notice that my ability to put up with as much as I used to is tempered.
absolutely.
And I need to have that conversation with people. Hey, listen, I'm still not sleeping well. So if I get annoyed, let's be upfront about this. Nutrition, I'm not a nutrition Nazi. 80-20 rule, as we discussed in the first part. Most of the time I will eat well, but there are times when we've got to have those indulgences. But when I prepared to ride my bike to Melbourne, when I prepared to ride my bike over the Himalayas, when I was in Star Group or Star Force and operating at that level, nutrition was important to me. I had to have energy supplies, and my body had to be a certain way for me to be able to perform. So very, very essential. Meaningful connection, very, very quickly. We have a massive group of friends. These are the friends we run into at the shops and we go, g'day, how are you? Haven't seen you for ages. That's not a meaningful connection as much as you might really like them. We've got another group of friends that we regularly catch up with for dinner or go to the kids' events or share birthday parties or something like that. Again, these can be the meaningful people, but they're not always. These are the people that support you sometimes, but sometimes they may just talk behind your back as well or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. There is a small group, usually 3 to 5 people, that that if you have a problem at 3 o'clock in the morning and you need someone to talk to, you'll pick up the phone and say, hey, listen, I just need to talk to someone. And they will say, we are not doing this over the phone. I'm coming to your place. They will put something behind it. You know that no matter what you have done, they will help you get out of it and they will keep it between you and them. And it's your secret. These are the people that you can stuff up absolutely stupidly, and they'll be the people sitting next to you and having a laugh about it or taking it seriously. They are right there for you. We need to know who they are now. Once we go into that overwhelm and emotions go high and the rational thinking goes low, we don't want to be trying to get creative down here and figure out who those people are. Let's be proactive, know who they are now. Now, you spoke about compassion for yourself before, and as soon as you said it, I've gone, oh, yes, that's point 3 of this functional resilience. We've got to have compassion for ourselves. Empathy for self and others. It just fits nicely along that slide. But it is self-compassion. we make mistakes, we stuff up, we do things wrong, but we do plenty of good things as well. Okay. And we've got to remember what they are, and be gentle on ourselves. And if we want to lower our mental health, then have some empathy for other people. Understand that they make mistakes as well. There are people that I know, they'll go to their favorite barista for 2 years in a row, and then the barista will make a mistake or something goes wrong. They get a bad coffee, and that person goes, oh my gosh, this is a sign. Today's going to be terrible. Everything's going to go wrong. It's a sign. And they hang on to it for the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
The barista may have been having a bad day. They may have got your order mixed up with somebody else's. Have some empathy for them. The person that cuts you off, the person that says the wrong thing about you, they may just be having a bad day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reality is, if somebody is doing something 17 times in a row, okay, that's a different conversation. It's a different way of managing that.
Yeah,
But
I
that
start with
one-off,
curiosity and compassion. So, someone that cuts you off, rather than getting your knickers in a twist about, oh, that was so rude. Okay, well, maybe they're racing home to a sick kid, or maybe they've just had, like we never know what's going on. And so if we approach it with curiosity and compassion, I wonder what's going on for them today, and I hope everything's okay. Um,
yep,
it's not only does it spread kindness, woo woo energy vibes in the world, but it relieves us of that, discomfort and tension and annoyance and anger. Like it allows us to put that down when we can adopt that frame of mind.
absolutely. And there's generally nothing you can actually do about it.
Correct.
It's just people get into that wallow. Oh my gosh, this is something to complain about. There's nothing better in my life, but we won't go there too much. The getting active. I mean, I ride my bike to Melbourne. I ride over the Himalayas. I go skydiving. I do all these things. You don't have to be that active.
Oh, good.
You just need to get out and do something. Anything. Walk the dog. Throw the frisbee with the grandkids. Wander, just walk to the shops to do the shopping and get it home delivered up. I don't know, whatever it is. We
Yeah.
just need to be that little bit active. And as soon as we start, we will feel the benefits. Everybody accepts being active is good for our physical body, but there's now this whole wealth of information about how it's good for our psychology as well. And I can see
Absolutely.
you're ready to say something.
Yeah, that was a real challenge for me, the whole activity thing. And it was because I was holding on to an all or nothing mindset around it. So,
Yes.
if I don't go to the gym and do a 40-minute workout, then there's no point going. And I really had to shift to all or something. So,
Yep.
it was a shift I had to make. It all counts. So, if I just do a lap of my court while I'm on the phone chatting to someone, rather than sitting still or standing still when I'm on the phone for the duration of that phone call, that counts, right? Like
Absolutely.
it all counts. And so I really had to recognize that all or nothing mindset that I had. We talk about in NLP, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything, right? So if you've
Yep.
got that for exercise, you've got that for everything. So I really had to examine whether that was a resourceful belief system or unresourceful. Is this helping me or not helping? And in terms of the activity, just shifting to that all or something was really important to change, because otherwise I'd just, I'd be into the second pack of Tim Tams all the time.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, that's right. I love those in terms. But for me, it's if you're doing nothing at the moment, 5 minutes twice a week is something.
It all
Get
counts.
active. And
Yeah.
then once we do that 5 minutes twice a week, we go, actually, this isn't all that hard. Maybe I'll do it 3 times a week, 4 times a week. Actually, 5 minutes, I can do 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And it just builds up. But we've got to make that start. But don't expect too much of yourself
Yeah.
when you first start. I'm going through a period now where I've been off my bike for a long time. When I get back on my bike, it's going to be terrible. I'm not going to be as fit,
I
strong,
can't ride a
healthy.
bike, so you're lapping me.
But my expectations of myself could be I
Yes.
rode 200 kilometers a day to Melbourne. I should be able to keep that up. No, I've just been through a whole heap of stuff. What is optimal for me at this particular time? peak is never going to be reality right now,
Yeah.
right? But what is optimal? What's the very best I can do in the given circumstances?
Exactly. And it's like I was saying before, it's about adjusting the expectations so that you don't wallow in depression about, oh, I'm not reaching my goal, I'm not doing, it's adjusting those expectations, aiming for optimal rather than peak, assessing your capacity for the day, weighing up the 80/20, right? It all culminates into I guess like a mindset that becomes a lifestyle, right?
Absolutely. As I say, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything else. And if you have that little bit of compassion for yourself in
Mm.
that arena, that'll flow over to others as well, right? And that will allow us to actually drive further and harder. Guilt-free indulgence is the next one. And we discussed this a little bit in the first part of this episode. But the guilt-free indulgence is doing stuff that is probably wrong for us, but we still do it and enjoy it. And as I say,
In terms of nutrition, so using the food metaphor for this, I frame it as sometimes I eat for my body, I make food choices for my body, and sometimes I make food choices for my soul,
yeah, absolutely. For our mind.
right? And if you
Yeah.
don't beat yourself up for those, they're still really good for you.
This model is about uh, refresh, replenish, re-energize, re-engage. And if you do these things and you feel guilty about it, you're not refreshing, you're not replenishing,
That's right.
you are living in shame,
Yeah.
right? So we've got to be able to go, do you know something? 80/20 rule. I need a bit of time out. I'm going to indulge myself. And it doesn't have to be. The analogy I always make is if I open a packet of Tim Tams, I generally stop at about 2 packets. So that's the food indulgence. But if I get tired of spending time with my family, then I will take 10 minutes and just go outside and play in the garden or do the vegetable patch or whatever else. If I want to take time away from work, I will take time away. There may be something really important happening, but I'll take my lunch break and I'll actually have lunch away from the pressure of work and come back refreshed, replenished, re-energized. And it may not be hugely, but it's enough to get me back into it and re-engage. But we've got to do it guilt-free. And the last one is reframing challenges. And this is about stepping back, reframing, and then stepping up. Okay. And it is that simple. When you've done one or multiple of those 5 things below, then we can come back to it. And the old saying is, if you have a good sleep, you'll be able to look at things differently. And any one of those 5 things, you will come back and be able to look at it differently. And quite often we come back and we go, I'm not sure what I was worried about. There's the answer right there. Because we just
Often.
get this emotional overwhelm, the rational thinking goes low, and we can't think smart. Break
Yeah.
the tension of the
Yeah.
emotion, bring the rational thinking back up, the answers come to you.
Yeah, and listeners are going to be familiar with me talking about your reticular activating system, and what you set your mind to focus on, you get more of. And so if you're focused on the negative and the challenge and the tough, you're not going to see the solutions that are right in front of you. So I think taking that step back, go and address sleep, nutrition, hang out with someone you like, take some time for yourself, do all the other steps, and then come back to whatever was challenging you. And it'll be really obvious. I was there the whole time. I could just do this. You're like, why didn't I see that before? Right? Is because you were focused on different things, right? Our brain is programmed. I've talked about it heaps. I love it. And you're right. And so for those who are listening to this on audio, actually, I'm going to upload. I've made a decision, but I'll share that with you in a minute. Yeah, this is in a sort of a pyramid structure reminiscent of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, with sleep and nutrition at the bottom and the rest of these stuck on top, which makes perfect sense. That if you do them in order, in sequence, or at least the bottom one and then a variety of the ones in the middle, then when you get to the top of reframe your challenges, you're in a better place to be able to do that.
I have another model that I won't talk about now, but in fact, I've spoken about it already, and it's find your system, and it's the system that works for you. So when I talk to people about this functional resilience, I'll I'll explain all that to them, and then I'll say, what is your go-to? People go, do you know something? Having empathy for myself is what I really need. And that would be my first go-to. And once I've had some empathy for myself, I'll be able to relax, and then I'll be able to get some sleep. And so people have got to go, which one works best for me at that particular time for that particular challenge, right? And again, I go back to, we know ourselves. We know in our gut what is right for us. So find your system, work your system. It's what works for you. And some of the other models I have, I say to people, how would you reposition those steps that I've suggested? And people go, well, I'd never put that one as number 2. That would have to be number 1. But my model is the way it works for me. If it works differently, so long as it works, so long as you're taking some action. So for your listeners, any one of those steps, if you feel like this is time, in fact, I'll say quite honestly, sometimes when I'm overwhelmed, I'm absolutely exhausted, I don't go and have a sleep. I just sit in front of the TV and have a Netflix and wind down, get all the thoughts out of me, and I'll have that packet of Tim Tams or the 2 packets of Tim Tams. And then once I'm relaxed, I'll fall asleep in front of the couch, in front of the TV, and then go, now it's time for me to go to bed. Yeah. Whatever challenge you're going through, one of those will work. But when one of those first 5 happen, then we can step back, reframe, and step back into the fray again. The aspirational resilience is the next one, and hopefully I can get this to work again. There we go. Aspirational resilience. The 6 steps is the same pyramid, starting from the bottom and working all the way up. The first one is challenge the inner critic. That's the little voice inside your head that's always going, you are an idiot. Because we all hear it. We all say it. You don't have a chance. You're not good enough. Everybody else is better than you. What would make you think? All those self-doubts, self-limiting beliefs.
Why would you start a podcast? Yeah.
What were you thinking? You were not in the right frame of mind when you started a podcast. Absolutely. And then I quite often joke with people and say, so we all know that we've got that inner critic inside our head, and I say, has anybody got multiple voices inside their head? And everybody, a lot of people are laughing. They're going, oh, maybe I have, maybe I haven't. But we've also got that voice of positivity in our head. And you wouldn't have the critic if you didn't have the positivity, right? And that positivity is saying, have a crack. Why don't you? That looks interesting. I reckon you could do that. Oh, wow, why don't you have a try? And then you get the critic saying, no, you can't. You're an idiot. Why would you want to? But I like it. It really looks interesting. Oh, but remember the last time you stuffed up. And this conversation goes backwards and forwards. And the third voice I believe we have, or the third brain, sits above those other 2 and looking down and saying, oh, you're having that conversation again. Because we see ourselves having it. We listen to ourselves and we allow it to go on. So it's about challenging the inner critic.
Buddhism talks about the observer. So taking the role of the observer and observing the thoughts, right, as part of a meditation process. So recognizing that you're actually neither the critic nor the inner coach. You're neither of them, and you're both of them. And taking that third higher observer position.
Yeah. And recognizing that sometimes that inner critic is saying, don't run out in front of the truck because you're not fast enough. So it may be helping you.
Well, understanding, like we said earlier, that all that comes from within us is to serve our purpose, right? And typically the negativity, whether it's the inner critic or the negative thoughts, whatever it is generally speaking, 99.9% of the time, safety driven, right? So the inner critic wants to keep you in your zone of familiar so that you don't take risks, so that you don't take a chance, and you're safe, and we know the lay of the land, and it's all cool. The problem is that growth lives outside of the zone of familiar, right? So yeah, you can live your life like that, but you just, there's not a lot of progress and growth within that. But the intention of even these voices that we can find frustrating or challenging, it comes from within us. Our subconscious wants us to live a long, long life, right? So it's coming, there's always a positive intention behind it, even if it sounds negative, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Now, I'm well, you and I could go on so many tangents and we
I
think the
think
same.
I think we might. Yes.
Because I'm going to take you on a little tangent now. You just talked about that zone of familiar, and that's the zone of comfort, the comfort zone. And growth happens outside the comfort zone.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it. But outside the comfort zone is also stress and change and challenge. And that can be good. But as I said in the beginning, if we spend too much time in change and challenge and growth, then we'll head to burnout.
Yep.
So sometimes, and this is something that I don't hear many people say, in fact, it's very, very rare I hear anybody say it. Sometimes we've got to go back to comfort zone and sit there for a little while, because in the comfort zone, there is no stress. This is where we can refresh, replenish, re-energize, and then re-engage. And we've got to go there. We've got to take that pressure off. We want to push, but we can't push for too long, too hard. Otherwise, we're going to burnout. But if we stay in the comfort zone, we're going to go into rust out.
Yeah, this is.
So durability will come from knowing when to push and when to relax.
Yeah.
And I've relaxed long enough. I've got all my energy back. Now, let me reframe it. Was I doing it the right way? Can I do it differently? And I've got another couple of different models to suggest how we can reframe it and how we can reassess it.
Refocus, reset, Roger.
Yeah, absolutely. And then go back and push again.
Yeah.
But be gentle on ourselves enough to say, I started down this road on this challenge. I'm not making it. I'm getting stressed. I need to come back and just take a different perspective. Let's get back to that place where there's no stress. Otherwise, your mental health is going to be challenged.
Yeah, there is much. Yeah, there's further conversations about eustress and de-stress and kinds of stress, and I call it the familiar zone because people will stay there even if it's uncomfortable. But it's familiar.
Yes.
And so that's why I rebadged the comfort zone, because I know people will stay in a job longer than they should, or a relationship longer than they should. They know it's uncomfortable. They know it's not great for them, but it's the power of familiar. Like, the better the devil you know, they'll stay there anyway until they feel resourced enough that they have the capacity to then step out of it. So
I really like that distinction. Really like it.
You can steal it, actually. Yeah, there's a further conversation.
I'll credit you every time. I will credit you every time. Okay, very quickly, because we've been on here over an hour, over 2.5 hours.
Yeah, let's breeze through the rest of these, and then we'll have a bit of a off the record chat.
Practice self-appreciation, right? Practice self-appreciation is recognizing the little things you do well that you can repeat and get better at. Because we've got to recognize the little things. We recognize everybody else's big things because we don't see them doing the little things. We don't see them having sleepless nights and studying hard and having tears and frustrations. We just see them doing the massive things that we don't see them for a month and, oh my gosh, they've changed so much. So practice self-appreciation for the little things. And I've got lots of stories about appreciating moving my little finger directly after the shooting, and that gave me the enthusiasm that something's happening. So, and I can go into that deeper and deeper. Draw strength from your successes. Now, in the first part of the podcast, I spoke about that previous incident where the guy pulled a gun, tried to shoot my partner, and I put my thumb between the hammer and the gun. Success was created there. How did I do that? How was I able to control my mind and my body so that I could think that through? Draw strength from those successes, and how can we take that success and put it together in this one? Leverage it. The things we do well, leverage them. Okay? Be great at what you do best. That little voice inside your head, that little critic that's saying you're an idiot, right, is the one that also says, yeah, I know you can do this well. Everybody recognizes you can do this well, but you're an idiot. So if you can do it well, everybody can do it better than you. But we've got to recognize what we're great at. And we've got to be great at what we do best, right? And leverage what we do best. Yes, still recognize we've got growth to go in certain areas, but be proud of what we do, right? And the more pride we have, the more belief we have, the more confidence we have. And I've got another model for that as well, as you can well imagine. Accept genuine compliments, and this is one that people don't do well. I still, as much as I talk about it, I recognize myself going, no, Derrick, shut up, accept that compliment. Our default is to go, no, not me. They're better than me, because that little voice inside our head. And it's a simple change, but when we do mess up, if we don't have those compliments in the back of our mind, we'll go, I've stuffed up again. I'm always making mistakes. But when you remember that compliment was over there, the boss, my partner, my friend, my sporting colleague, whatever, they recognized I did it well back then, they'll have a belief that I'll be able to fix this, right? I will be able to lift my performance and get over it. So we've got to remember what those compliments are, if they're genuine, right? And that's what we've got to play on. And the last one, be congruent with your purpose, right? Live your life the way you want to live it, with meaning. And I pick up on that word, have passion, have purpose, right? Know what your meaning is, follow your meaning. If we are trying to prove ourselves to other people, and that's our only drive, when we stuff up, that little critic is going to go, see, you're an idiot, and you give that voice credence. So be congruent with your purpose. What's meaningful for you? What's going to fulfill you? Because if you're congruent with your purpose and you hit a challenge, you'll go, I don't care what the challenge is. I'm going to push through.
Yeah, because it's bigger than you.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So I want to inspire people to live what I call an inside out life, which is, rather than taking all the outside stuff and trying to bring all that in and make them happy and make them happy from over there and be the person that you think that they think you need to be when you're at work, and take all that external stuff and try and jam it in you and make it fit and, form it and slot it in. Live an inside out life, which is being congruent with your purpose and knowing who you are and knowing your values and what's important to you and what you're passionate about, and then put that out in the world. So, like I said, I've said multiple times over the last couple of hours that, there's so much alignment and congruence in the things that we talk about and the things that we're passionate about. I am going to have to call it because it has been mammoth. And I'll have a chat to you in a sec, but I wanted to thank you for everything that you have shared. This has just been amazing. I've got no doubt people are going to get so much value from everything that you've shared with us in these conversations. Derrick, it's just been phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Lisa, I've completely enjoyed it. As I love the way your mind works, the way you analyze, the way you interpret, and the way you're open to different conversations. When I looked at the time and I've gone, oh my gosh, that's over 2.5 hours. I've gone, when did that time pass?
Yeah, it's easy to do. Yeah, thank you so much. Again, people can check you out on socials. Head to, is it derrickmcmanus.com?
Correct.
Yes. And all the links will be in all the show notes anyway. So you can definitely find Derrick available for incredible workshops and speaking presentations and mentoring. So feel free to reach out to him directly. Let him know that you heard about him on Epiphanish podcast. And I'm sure he'd be happy to have a conversation with you about how you can get from where you are to where you want to be.
And you know something I've just realized, and I've never said this in any other podcast, but if people can't work out how to spell my name, just Google human durability. I'm the only one in the world that is talking about human durability. And I know that's a big call, but I've had clients Google it and go, oh, you are the only one talking about human durability. So if you can't find me anywhere else, human durability, and I'll come up.
Beautiful. Thanks again for so much of your generous.
It's an absolute pleasure. You may have to put this into 2 episodes, but an A and a B version.
I think I will.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.